Hey, what's up, everybody? Mark MacKinnon here. Happy New Year. Today, I wanted to take some time to look back at the 2021 year for Dyskami, as well as projecting forward and what's happening in 2022. Now, it's no surprise that 2021 was extremely challenging worldwide for a number of reasons related to the pandemic. And it's difficult to look back and see things as successes, but we did a lot of work with the company. There's only two of us full-time. And we do a lot for just the two of us, Robin, our creative director, and me. But we also hire an awful lot of freelancers that we work with, whether it's editing or art or doing some writing. And so I think we're probably producing way beyond what a company of our size should produce. But it's great. It's just so much fun. I've had a lot of chance to reflect on what we should be doing for 2022 and going forward. And there's some really exciting things to look at. So let's first look back at what happened in 2021. So for the BESM line, we actually fulfilled one of our Kickstarters that we ran right at the end of 2020, and that was BESM Extras that focused on. So we released 6 different products throughout 2021 for the BESM line. So we have BESM Extras and Dramatis Personae. So the Extras was the optional rules book that was kind of an essential core rule book for BESM. Dramatis Personae is 144 pages. This is our NPC book. It's excellent. We also have something new that we didn't do before, BESM 2D Animinies. So these are cardboard miniatures that you can use on your gaming table. Not that we have a grid-based combat system, but it's something that some people might want to do. And so we took all the great art for BESM, put it on cardboard minis, and offered that as well. We started a new line of BESM Adventures. So these are 32 pages. It's a small book. It's a 32-page adventure. This is volume 1 for introductory characters. And Tokyo Sidekick, which is another NPC book. This is related to the Japanime games. They have a board game coming out called Tokyo Sidekick from Japan, and these are taking the characters in the board game and then providing stats for them. These are kind of a blend of superhero and anime. And then the last thing is the dice tower and dice tray. So this is a constructible dice tower. So you have it on punch boards, you punch it out, you roll your dice through here, keeps everything on the table, and that comes with a couple of dice trays as well. So that was the BESM line that we got fulfilled in 2021. So a lot of great products there. The next thing we look at is that we ran 2 Kickstarters in 2021. One of them was for Anime 5e, which was a new product line for us, and it was exceedingly well received. It blew away all of our expectations, placed within the top 20 of RPG Kickstarters of all time. And we're really happy with how that came out. Now, with COVID, we ended up having some fulfillment and shipping issues, and I do want to talk about that one. Later in 2021, we ran another Kickstarter for TriStat games, and this is, once again, a new product line that we hadn't had before. So these are mini games. So they're box sets designed to be somewhat introductory in nature. They take the TriStat rules, which are multi-genre by their, how they're created, and we strip them down to the essential components for that specific genre and setting. So we had 3 of them that we released at Kickstarter at once, and it was for Pixies, which is the little fairies and pixies inside your house, kind of like the Borrowers or Secret of Arrietty. We also had Worms, where we're on the other end of the size spectrum. We're actually playing dragons, huge dragons, and that's Worms. And then the final one is Demonicity, which is a bit of a throwback to kind of the 80s and 90s vibe for demons invading a city, kind of similar to Wicked City or Demon City Shinjuku for anime. Now, none of these are anime games, but you can play them in an anime style. And Demon City Shinjuku was a game that Guardians of Order published a long time ago as an RPG, but Demonicity is the new game that we have, where you're actually going to be playing characters working for an organization going into a city taken over by demonic forces to try to save the world. So those 3 games were Kickstarted at once. Now, neither the Anime 5e nor the 3 TriStat minigames Kickstarters are fulfilled yet. And I mentioned about shipping issues, particularly for Anime 5e. We had thought that would be fulfilled by now. We do release our PDFs as soon as we can for Anime 5e, for TriStat games, for all of our Kickstarters. It's the advantage of RPG Kickstarters versus board games is, of course, we can release the PDFs quite quickly. But what we have is some really, really good news about the shipping. we managed to get half of the Anime 5e on a boat and shipped from our factory, heading to our North American and our European and our Australian warehouses. Half of it was shipped in December, but we needed the other half ship because we can't just fulfill half a Kickstarter. Well, we received some great news during the holidays that the second half is shipping next week. So they're all going to be on the ocean, coming over from Asia to our warehouses. We hope there's not going to be a lot of delays at the ports, at customs. We're strategically placing it into ports that aren't as busy and hoping and just doing longer transportation on ground, because we know in particular the LA port, there's a lot of problems there with a backlog. So fingers crossed. We don't know how long it's going to take once it arrives in North America, for example. We don't know how long it'll take to get through customs, but as soon as we can, we're going to fulfill that. And we're super excited about Anime 5e. Represents a new product line for us, taking the point-based creation ideas that we have in our TriStat system and taking the 5th edition standard, very common role-playing game with levels and races, and merging them together to create a point-based version of the standard 5th edition under the Open Gaming license. So let's talk a little bit about those products that we have on the boats, and half of them are going to be shipping next week as well, and we're really looking forward to that. So we have Anime 5e. This is the core game, and there's 2 different versions of this core book. We have the deluxe edition, which is quite nice with leatherette cover. We got some gilded edging, and then the standard edition on this. Gorgeous, gorgeous books. So those 2, but in addition, we want to bring something back, manga style format as anime. So this is a smaller, still the exact same game. It's just compacted down to a smaller format. So this is our pocket-sized edition that we have. And so it's all in black and white. There's not nearly as much flash in this one, but it's a really low price option for the people. And that was part of the Kickstarter as well. We also have the game screen and adventure. That's going to be coming as well. So gorgeous panoramic. As you can see, a nice image with all the tables that you need on the other side, and that comes with an adventure. So that was another one of the products. And then the character folio. And so this is a way to, it's an expanded character sheet. And then finally, the last thing two things actually that we have is we have the custom dice set, which is your standard polyhedral set, but because we included 3 6-sided dice for when you're rolling stats, and 6 sides are kind of a really nice die size that we have. So this is a custom dice set where they're all custom stamped with the Anime 5e logo. And then, like we did for the BESM Extras campaign, we have a dice tower. And literally, this is a wizard's tower. So you roll your dice, falls down into a moat. And that comes along with, once again, neoprene dice trays, a couple of those. And this will all keep your dice on the table. So, wow, that was an awful lot of Kickstarter products that we had for 2021 that's carrying over for fulfillment of the physical products into 2022. We're expecting the Anime 5e, probably, if everything goes well, hitting kind of at the end of the first quarter. The TriStat games were actually, it's unfortunate this video is one day too early because of the holiday. Our FedEx package is arriving tomorrow that we expect that's going to have all of the color proofs and the layout proofs for the TriStat games. So they're at the printer right now. We're just going over the final production of those, and they're going to get into the production, and we'll get them shipped as soon as we can as well. So let's talk about what's happening next. So that was looking back at 2021. So looking forward in 2022, the big thing that we have going on is the Absolute Power role-playing game, superhero role-playing using the TriStat system. This, I can't tell you I'm excited about this. As much as BESM, which was the kind of the game that started my publishing career, was the start of the TriStat system, and it's always going to kind of be my baby with BESM. Absolute Power, this production is, I think, the best thing that I've ever worked on. It is spectacular. So we have a Kickstarter that we're going to be running in February. And right now we're releasing kind of daily teasers and updates and kind of content previews. So follow along on our socials, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and you will be able to kind of get that teaser as we go. Once the Kickstarter launches, there are some spectacular products in this. So right off the bat, of course, any role-playing game requires a core book. But we discovered during layout, after the book was written, that we could not fit this all into a single book. It would have been way too large. There's almost 500,000 words in the Absolute Power role-playing game. Because it's not just a game system the way, say, BESM was, which didn't really have a setting. Absolute Power is game plus setting. And so it required us to split the core RPG into 2 volumes, almost like, kind of like a player's handbook and a GM's guide. But with this one, what we're doing is splitting it into the system book and the essentials book. So the essentials book has a lot of the campaign information, a lot of GMing advice, the gadgets. All of those come into the systems book, or the essentials book. The systems book is the core Tri-Stat system. Lots of examples in this. It's an expanded version of anything we've done in the past. And so each of these 2 books, as part of the core game, are both 336 pages. And so, as you can see, putting them together, we're getting pretty close to a 700-page core rulebook, which is why we really had to split it. This is a spectacular second edition of the Silver Age Sentinels role-playing game, which came out in 2002. At the time, that was a really important role-playing game that I had worked on. But time goes on, it faded away, and then now that we're back, when we licensed the Tri-Stat system, BESM, and Silver Age Sentinels from Paradox Interactive, we licensed the right to them, and we wanted to take Silver Age Sentinels, which was, again, set in 2021, and fast forward it by 20 years. And so this setting starts kind of January 1st, 2021. All of the things in the real world, as much as they have been affected by superhero events, have occurred. And so we set the setting 20 years in the future, which means the characters from Silver Age Sentinels are all 20 years older. Some of them have moved on, some of them have passed away, some of them have just gotten older, and some have switched sides, and of course there's a bunch of new ones as well. And power levels have increased for some characters, where they're getting better over those 20 years, where other characters have actually had reductions in power over those 20 years because they've got old and their powers have been waning. So Absolute Power Kickstarter, you don't want to miss this. If you're a BESM fan, you want this because this expands the Tri-Stat system up to a super-powered level, taking things from 6 levels up to 10 levels, taking the stats from level up to rank 12 and pushing up to 20 to 24. This is a great version of anyone who wants to get a superhero game. It's a point-based system. It's not class-based. If you're familiar with BESM, you'll be familiar with Absolute Power, the core system, but we've added more to it. The Kickstarter isn't just about the core game, although there are 2 rule books, but what we've also done is we've packaged them together in a slipcase format. So you can get them separately, just like individual game books, but we've also had a bit of a more deluxe treatment. It's not a full-on, what I call a deluxe limited edition, but a slipcase edition that's going to have the 2 of them packaged together. We're also releasing in that set a game screen, of course, a character folio. So some of the standard things that go along with what we like to do with our role-playing game releases. We're also doing a set of dice. We're going to be doing a dice tower, which is actually literally the Empire, the Olympian Tower that's in Empire City that our main superhero group, the Guard, operates out of. It's actually a kind of a replica, a little bit of a version of that tower. So with dice and character folio, GM screens, dice rolling kit with that. We also have the cardboard minis. Once again, we're bringing that out. And the final thing that's an interesting product that we didn't know we were going to do this, but it just kind of organically came up, is we realized we needed, kind of like what we're doing with the pocket edition of this, we needed a smaller version of Absolute Power. And so we looked and we said, well, Absolute Power is really, it's kind of, there's a core system and then the setting. What if we released Tri-Stat Core, the actual Tri-Stat system, in a tight, compact format? Back mid-2000s, early 2000s, we released, the previous company, Guardians of Order, I was involved in the release of Tri-Stat DX, which at that point was just the system-only version of the Tri-Stat system. It was a really light on graphics. It was designed to be an intro game, something you add to a table. So back then, if you had Silver Age Sentinels or BESM, you can add on the Tri-Stat DX if you want extra copies on the table, or you can use it as on its own, of course. So the Tri-Stat Core is something that can be integrated in with Absolute Power, but you can play it by itself. And that's something that we thought this is the right time to introduce just the system itself in a nice compact pocket-sized format. And so there's that. And then the final thing we're doing, which we had found that there was a real appetite when we did a stretch goal in Anime 5e with an anime superhero RPG soundtrack as a stretch goal. And we thought, people seem to really like that. So why don't we do, right off the bat, include an Absolute Power soundtrack or a superhero RPG soundtrack. It doesn't matter what superhero game you play, you can have this in the background if you're playing a game. And so this is something that we've got composed, and it's going to be wonderful, and that'll be included within the Kickstarter as well. So that's coming in February. It's going to be run through most of February into the beginning part of March. It is a big Kickstarter for us. And for us, this is one of the biggest product releases we've ever had in terms of the number of products, in terms of the scope of the game. This is spectacular, and certainly encourage you to check it out. That is February. Jumping further down the line, what else do we have planned for 2022? So BESM. Well, 2021, we had those 6 product releases, but we have some big plans for mid-year as well for BESM. Some of you knew that we had announced really early on, before the core game was out, that we're going to do a BESM multiverse, the anime multiverse book. And we never kind of got around to it, and pandemic hit, and working on other projects while bringing on Robin as our creative director. One of the reasons we did that was specifically to have more writing attention being paid to our projects. And one of the first things after Absolute Power, which was the first thing they worked on, was to get them to work on the BESM multiverse. This book is fantastic. It's over 200 pages, contains the detailed setting info for the prime worlds, there's kind of 7 prime worlds in our anime setting in the multiverse, and then it kind of expands beyond there. So you got your core worlds, and then you have worlds outside and beyond. And so this book I just actually finished layout during the holidays, so we're still contracting art, and so that needs to come in. This is going to be a mid-year Kickstarter release that we're going to be having for that, but we're well on our way to getting BESM Multiverse out. Finally, it's something that we wanted to do for BESM, but it will be released in 2022, both in, of course, the hardcover and in the PDF edition. But we're not just releasing that. Whenever we do Kickstarters, we like to kind of, if we can, bundle several products together. So another thing we're releasing to go along with the BESM Multiverse book is Euresia, Grave of Heaven. So this is another setting book, and longtime BESM fans will remember that for BESM 2nd edition, Euresia by S. John Ross was one of the popular fantasy supplements that we did. Well, last year we acquired those rights back from Euresia to re-release a version of Euresia for BESM 4th edition with some additional content. So over the past, say, 20 years or so, where Euresia has been published as a systemless kind of game. Once Guardians of Order was finished with it, it reverted back to S-John, and he's been working on it and releasing different products. Well, what we've done is we're kind of combining all the different products he had into a single new release as a setting book. And we also have S-John working on some additional content for it as well. So that is going to be released along with the BESM Multiverse book. You can kind of consider it 2 settings. So one is kind of a peripheral setting that looks at kind of everything in the entirety of the multiverse, and Euresia is one specific world, one land that we're going to be focused on. Another product that we're super excited, this is new territory for us going into, is we have someone working on a lit RPG novel trilogy set in the BESM multiverse. So lit RPG, if you're not familiar with it, it's similar to kind of an isekai anime shows. It doesn't have to be anime, of course, but lit RPG is when characters are somehow involved in a world, but it comes across like a game. So characters will have stats. They might have classes or levels or points, or depending how it works, it's like they're stuck in a video game or a role-playing game. So it's a subgenre of fantasy or speculative fiction called lit RPG, and kind of fallen in love with it. During the pandemic, I ended up doing a lot of lit RPG reading, and the specific setup, if you're familiar with BESM 4th edition, with the worlds that we have, there's one world that bleeds over into another one through a video game, and that's won't kind of spoil too much about it, but that's right in the kind of the core setting that's in the book, where the Imago setting has a video game concept that bleeds into Icarus setting, through the Icarian video game, MMORPG. And so that is where the game is going to be set. So it's going to be a novel trilogy, a lit RPG trilogy. We're going to be releasing the first one in 2022, and the next two will release whenever it's appropriate. We hope to have audiobooks for it. It's still very new for us, so we're kind of seeing where it goes. And the first novel is well on its way. It's way more than halfway done. But of course, it'll have to go through editing and preparation. So that, once again, we're looking at a mid-year Kickstarter for that. And then there's another game. So as I said, we like kind of rolling a bunch of things into one Kickstarter, and other products that we have an expansion for BESM 4th edition that we're calling Origin Story. And this is a character creation, a random character creation book where you can sit and roll up a backstory for a character. And not everyone likes to do this. Some people, want to carefully construct exactly what their character is. But I remember I had a product called Creative Casting, Heroes of Legend, and this was a random character generator in a book format for the fantasy, which I use it for Dungeons & Dragons back when I was in high school. And I remember showing up to high school and bringing this creative casting in, and during lunch we would just roll up characters that we never had any intention of playing with. But it's fun just rolling up fantasy characters. And so we thought, wow, let's do this for the BESM multiverse. Let's have a random character generator background story that, again, we're calling it Origin Story, and let's have that for the BESM multiverse and tied into that. So that Kickstarter with the 4 different products will be out in mid-year. We don't have a lot of details on that. Still a lot to be worked on, but it's well on its way. So that's the BESM line. Looking forward, the next thing, although we're releasing all of these, of course, the Anime 5e product line, we're releasing those this year. The Kickstarter was last summer, and then it's been delayed. So we wanted to make sure we had another good, strong release, kind of end-year release for Anime 5e. And that's why we have a package of products that we're going to be doing then. It's kind of going to be headlined by a setting book we call Fastavia. So Fastavia is the world, the anime world that we've set up, that covers a wide range of fantasy. So you got your steampunk fantasy, your high fantasy, low fantasy, dark fantasy, gothic. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be some isekai aspects to it. If you're familiar with what we did in Anime 5e, we kind of integrated a lot of those aspects of what's common in a lot of fantasy anime and put it into a single game. And that's what the Fastavia setting book is. So like BESM Multiverse, it's going to be a couple hundred pages, and it's going to cover all the different continents that are on the world. It'll be a monster manual, it will be a class book, it'll be a race book. It's going to have all these aspects all mixed into one. And as a companion to the Fastavia setting, we're going to be doing a map pack. And again, a lot of this comes back to what I think players, there's a nostalgic factor to having maps that you kind of hang on your wall. But rather than having all these individual maps, one of the things we're envisioning is the globe, the world of Fastavia, which is not a continent. It is effectively a globe. I'm not saying that everything on the world has been explored, but what we're going to have is 9 maps that you're then going to be able to put them all next to each other and have a giant, we're talking like 6 feet by 6 feet map section on your wall, should you want to. But of course, you can just use the smaller individual maps if you're focused on a single continent for your adventures. And so we're pairing those two together as the main setting release. That will be the main core setting for Anime 5e that we're going to be putting out kind of later in the year. And that's going to go along with another book that we have that's going to be kind of our bit like a monster manual, a dedicated manual that we're calling a line of these books Monstrum Libri. It's kind of like Latin for monster book. And so this is going to be a Anime 5e specific monster manual. We're going to be setting them for the woodlands and the mountains. So you can have obviously unlimited number of monsters in any 5th edition game, but we're going to be focusing on a particular territory, which is the woodlands and the mountains, in this particular volume of Monstrum Libri. Later volumes, if this one seems to be well received, then we can release other ones, whether it's aquatic or transdimensional or just about anything that we have, desert oriented. But this first one is being worked on, and we're pretty excited about this because while you can use anything, any standard 5th edition monster, you can use it as it is, exactly into Anime 5e, which is the focus of why we actually set up Anime 5e the way we did. At the same time, it's nice to have the fully integrated system with the point-by-point based system. And so that's going to be coming out with that Kickstarter. And then the final thing is the origin story. I mean, we're going through the work of setting up the format and the structure for a random character generator for a multiverse in BESM, which is every single genre and every single world. Well, then we're going to focus it down and do it specifically for anime fantasy, a background and history generator random, because it's a lot of fun to do that. Again, optional, but it's a way to just give ideas, kind of get those creative juices flowing of, that's an interesting idea for my character. I hadn't thought about doing that. And so that's something that's going to be coming out with that Kickstarter. So we're looking at that later in the year. That's a lot. That's a lot for 22, but and wait, there's more. We're not quite done. One of the things you'll see sitting here, this is our new Sailor Moon Crystal game. This is Impostress. For those who've been following along with Dyskami for a while, this has been in the works for a couple of years, and it took a long time to get approved. There's a lot of detail in this. Not that it's a complex game. This is a party game, but there is a lot of text, and working with a licensor sometimes take a while to get things approved. So if you're familiar with the game Hive Mind, done by Richard Garfield of Magic the Gathering. So Hive Mind is a game that Calliope Games publishes, and we licensed the idea of doing a Sailor Moon Crystal specific version of Hive Mind. It's a fantastic party game, kind of like if you think of the opposite of Scattergories. If you're not familiar with Hive Mind, Scattergories is very popular, where you come up with some sort of question and you have to write down answers that are different than everybody else. In Impostress, you have to come up with answers that are the same as everyone else. So if you're a hardcore Sailor Moon fan, Sailor Moon Crystal fan, this game is going to be for you. And if you're a casual fan, hey, that's fine. It's still a great game as well, and you're going to enjoy it. So that game, it's coming over on the boats right now, and it's going to be released in 2022. We also look at some space that we have in our schedule, or stuff that we can make space for, because as people know, we had planned to do some anime licenses for role-playing games, and we haven't announced what they are, and we've on purpose, because licensing, you can get a contract signed, but it doesn't mean you're kind of ready to move ahead with things yet. So still are things a little bit up in the air on exactly how we're going to proceed with it, but we have a couple licenses lined up on what we'd like to do. We just have to work on the specific details, and those are games that we we'll be working on sometime in 2021 or 2022. We can't get into the specifics about it, but that's something else that we have looking at our schedule. And that's it. That's the entirety of 2022. We're talking an awful lot of products that we're going to be doing. And we're going to be supporting all of our lines. I mean, with this year, at the end of this year, we will have a BESM RPG line, Anime 5e RPG line, Absolute Power RPG line, and then the Tri-Stat mini games RPG line. And now we have 4 games moving forward that we're going to be supporting. We have as I mentioned, the Sailor Moon Crystal board game line. Impostress is the last game that we have for there. So we released Dice Challenge, we released Truth or Bluff, and now Impostress. And then that line is then finished. So we got a lot of plans for the year. We're excited. It's right at the beginning of the year, but we're already jumping in and going to be making the best year of it. We don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic. We know that there are some massive effects going on right now. We just received news a couple of hours ago, for example, that our province, we're in Ontario, province is going to be doing some extra lockdowns, and it's going to be affecting things moving forward. So we don't know who we'll be seeing at conventions. We don't know which conventions we'll be going to, or Japan Anime Games, which often represents us at conventions. We don't know which one they're going to be going to. We're going to be following the science, following the data, following our gut, to make sure that we can have as safe a year as possible. And we hope that with vaccinations on the rise, that globally we can get all of this under control and get back to doing some awesome gaming in person, which would be fantastic. So thanks for taking the time to watch this quite a long video, but we wanted to give you a perspective of what's happened before and what's going forward. We're super excited. At Dyskami, Dyskami, at Dyskami. That's our Instagram, our Twitter, our Facebook. Follow along. get involved with those. Find the Absolute Power Kickstarter link and click that notify me button, so when it launches in February, you'll get a notification that you can pledge your support right away. We'd love to have your support, because this is going to be a fantastic product. So thank you once again. Stay safe, stay warm, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.